Hey guys, Products of Your Environment, episode 4. I've got a very different topic and guest to talk about today, something I'm very excited about, and I hope you guys watching will enjoy this. Today, we're going to be speaking to a RAF pilot in training, and he goes by the name of Nick Humphreys. So, big welcome to Nick.
Hey man, how you doing? You all right?
All good, all good. How are you?
Yeah, man, not too bad, not too bad. Just getting through.
Of course. I think everyone's on the same boat, lockdown wise.
Yeah, no, this is it, to be honest, isn't it? I mean, to be fair, it's obviously frustrating, like, not being able to get your hair cut, go to the gym, like go on holiday. But at the end of the day, there's a significant number of people in much worse situations than ourselves. So I think, for the next few months, we just got to like dig in, wait for this vaccine to roll out, and hopefully return to normality a bit later on.
Yeah, 100%. So, Nick, talk to me a bit about your background education-wise, like A levels, university, your experience there.
Yeah, cool, of course. So I've always been like very lucky through all of my life. So the way teaching the education system is set up in this country kind of really complements my learning style. And I know this certainly isn't the case for a lot of people who go through school. And I can imagine it must be really quite disheartening for those that are putting all that work in, but they just can't seem to grasp the concepts. And definitely, if anyone's watching it and it feels like this applies to them, it's important to realize that academic success, it certainly isn't the only way. But they are going to have to, put that work in, do some digging, explore their skills, and just find that thing that they can excel at, that gives them that feeling of achievement and success. But yeah, as I mentioned, I was never one of these, so I was definitely one of the lucky ones. Something else I had, which I think we'll touch on a little bit later on, is a sense of direction from a young age. I knew kind of exactly what I wanted to do, and although I didn't know exactly how to achieve it at that younger age, it just kind of gave everything a little bit more substance and reason. I think we can easily get bogged down, through education, just wondering what is the point in a lot of the stuff you are learning. When am I going to use this in my life? But if you have a goal that you've set and you know what kind of work ethic you need to develop in order to get the necessary skills to get there, I think it just keeps you on track, and it keeps that drive to succeed, and it gives you, or allows you rather, to give everything 100%, all the way through your academic career, be it mock exams or the real thing, just kind of treating everything with that same passion and importance. So school went really quite well. I worked out quite early on that I was quite good with numbers and science, but I was terrible at art and the performing arts and DT, anything kind of with my hands and all that stuff. Languages as well, I just couldn't seem to grasp. But therefore, as I went through the system, I ensured I acted on those strengths. So I went to college. I ended up taking maths, chemistry, physics, and biology A level, which sounds like sadistic. It sounds like some form of like self-punishment, but the subjects, they actually complement each other really quite well. There's all a bit of crossover, and it just gives you that wider understanding of the science world, which I was able to make use of in my degree later on. So yeah, following A levels, accepted an offer to study astrophysics at Cardiff University. I actually didn't initially want to go to university straight away. I'd wanted to join the Air Force at 18, but at the time they just weren't recruiting. So I figured, I might as well use my time effectively, go get some extra qualifications, doing kind of what I was good at the time. Just in case, plan A didn't go as I wanted, then I would have options for a plan B. But something, I remember from this point in my life is how fast you go from blissfully progressing through education, and you kind of know exactly what you're going to do the next year, where you're going to be, what you're going to be doing, to this absolute barrage of decisions in life. And I think it's hard to know what to do, and it can be really quite overwhelming. So I think definitely to anyone that's in that situation now or has felt that, I think it's very normal, and it's definitely worth pointing out that although at the time it kind of feels like if you don't act now in this instant you'll be left behind, you really won't be. If you need to take the time out, make the right decisions, then that is worth doing. But uni was awesome. Cardiff was a great city. I met some amazing people who I'm still close friends with today. I had some of the best experiences of my life for sure, and I wouldn't do anything differently if I had the time again. And of course, my heart goes out to all those currently at uni throughout the entire education system, who are facing the disruptions that this pandemic has brought at the moment, because it's not ideal for that learning process. But I just hope we can return to kind of some form of normality soon. But
Yeah,
yeah, I hope I didn't ramble too much. That's an insight into my education.
yeah. Just before one more thing I want you to speak about for the people that don't know, what is astrophysics in, without going into so much detail, can you just put it into a couple lines?
Yeah, of course. I mean, effectively, so physics covers like a massive, wide, broad range of subjects, but astrophysics just focuses on the space side of things. So I was always kind of, really interested in like black holes and exoplanets, kind of the search for extraterrestrial life and all that kind of stuff. So I thought, I enjoyed physics. The maths I was quite good at. Even though I didn't enjoy the maths so much, it's all part of the package. So yeah, I was like, let's just let's go do the physics and get the astrophysics bit with it, all the astronomy stuff and all that.
So is there extraterrestrial life then out there?
Well, I mean, who knows? Who knows?
There's
We'll
a
have to
lot of
wait and see.
conspiracies, isn't there? There's a lot of
No,
conspiracies.
there's plenty. But you know what? The universe is so big. There's so many possibilities. So we just have to we'll have to find out.
All right. So from what I know, you've been inspired from a young age to fly planes. What was it that inspired you, and why did you want to get into that?
Yeah, okay, yeah, this is true. I'd always wanted to fly from very early on in my life, and this is kind of what I was touching on earlier on when I was talking about that sense of direction at school. In terms of what age I actually set my heart on it is really quite hard to pinpoint. I often throw a number at it, like I was like 4 to 5 years old, but it's not necessarily that I remember being like, right, this is exactly what I want to do. It's more of a case of, I can't remember not wanting to do it. So for me, I'd probably just say it started in those when those early memories began to engrave and stick. So I was probably about five-ish, something like that. In terms of what exactly inspired me, like again, I couldn't put my finger exactly on what that was. It's more like an amalgamation of factors. It wasn't as simple as just having a family member in the aviation industry and me being like, right, I want to do kind of what they do. But when I look back, I kind of vividly remember aspects of that passion shining through. Like when most kids are looking forward to going on holiday, it's that
Yeah.
excitement. It's like playing the pool and go to the water parks and the beaches. But for me, like my favorite part was just going to the airport. Getting to sit and watch the aircraft land and depart one after another. It was just epic. And I specifically remember in Cyprus, Mackenzie Beach lined up nearly perfectly with the approach path of inbound aircraft into Larnaca Airport. And I just spend all day like running up and down the beach as a kid. As they came in, I'll be able to name like all the airlines just from the tail art. And of course, being in the aircraft was just phenomenal. The longer the flight, the better. That rush at takeoff, like the roar of the engines, I just found it all amazing. And pre 9/11, security was a lot less tight on air travel. The doors to the cockpit and the pilots up front was often left open, which you don't see today. And my dad would ask the cabin crew, while everyone else was being seated, if I could go and sit with the pilots up front and just, get a feel for the experience. And it's experiences like that you just can't put a value on. They're so powerful. They basically create like a lifetime's worth of motivation to achieve something.
Yeah.
And yeah, as I grew up, I began to have kind of, more and more of an appreciation of what exactly it was I wanted. And, I'd go and buy the best flight simulator at the time and spend hours flying around, just to get a taste for it. I'd be making and painting like model aircraft and like hanging them from my bedroom ceiling. But in terms of flying in the RAF, I mean, that kind of developed a bit later. Again, I don't know what the trigger moment was, but the only thing that came close to my obsession for airplanes at the time was my obsession with the military. I used to collect kit from local army surplus stores. I had crates full of toy guns. My room was completely olive green with camo netting and aircraft stenciled on the walls. I mean, you couldn't sell a house with a room like that now. But do you know what? It was just heaven at the time. So I imagine at some point I decided to just put two and two together and push to do both the things I love. So when I was old enough, I joined the local air cadet squadron. I was able to get opportunities to go flying and gliding, fire rifles. And although it's very different and can't be compared to regular service at all, it was just a good insight in what it'd be like to put a uniform on. Eventually I felt like I outgrew the air training corps. So I finished up college, went to uni, and that pretty much took me up to the day I applied.
Amazing. Just going back, I think one thing everyone can relate to as a childhood throwback is their dad asking the captain if
Yeah, for
you
sure.
could take a picture in the cockpit. I think
Yeah.
I
It's
remember doing it plenty
it's
of times,
good.
and it was fascinating. It's amazing. So, just on the interview and trial process of getting into training in the RAF, how does that work? What was that like? I'm guessing you've experienced some challenges within training, and how have you got over those?
Yeah, absolutely. So you know, one of the biggest challenges straight off the bat was actually just like building up the courage to apply in the first place. I know that probably sounds crazy because you know I've just been spent all this time talking about you know how I've wanted to do this my entire life. Like this has been the goal. But as the time to do it got closer and closer, I just began to have these like quite strong feelings of doubt. You know, I was having like powerful thoughts and completely basically convincing myself that you know I wasn't good enough for the job. Um, and I'm not sure exactly why this came about. I think potentially it was to do with like an immense fear of failure. You know, like what if this doesn't go well? What am I going to do? What am I going to tell people?
Mm.
So that delayed my application massively initially. So you know, I graduated out of university. I was back at home, and I was just trying to formulate a plan. You know, I wasn't moving forward at all. I was just kind of sidestepping. But it just became one of those moments I think in life where the only way to get yourself out of what could be like a negative spiral is through action. And you know all I felt like I wanted to do was like run away and hide, but it wasn't going to solve anything. So I basically just had to chuck those emotions aside and just get online and chuck my initial application in. Now that the selection process itself, it certainly wasn't going to be easy, and looking at it as a whole is quite overwhelming. So you know I tried to just focus on one step at a time. I think the year I applied, there were 6 to 7 thousand applicants for the job, and they were only going to accept 120 to 150 pilots out
Wow.
of that bunch. So yeah, around a 2% success rate that year, which on paper obviously is fairly horrendous. But the first stage, you know, the first stage was just of the application was what we call the aptitude test. And the aptitude test is a 6 to 7 hour computer-based test, which I can only describe as an assault on your brain. It's a multi-stage test which assesses like your numerical, verbal reasoning, spatial awareness, your memory, your ability to multitask, and like your hand-eye coordination. Effectively, everything you need to show to prove your capability of successfully completing flying training later on in your career. So I travelled up to RF Cranwell in Lincolnshire to take the test. You know, I stayed overnight, and even that was a challenge in itself because you're completely out of your comfort zone, somewhere that you've never been before. But you know, fortunately, I managed to scrape a pass there, and I was eligible to move on to the next phase, which was a filter interview. And the filter interview is just like a preliminary interview to find out what kind of a person you are, you know, what experience you have, and your motivations to join. Sort of talking about kind of a few things that we've been talking about today. And providing you pass, it's also an opportunity to get some feedback on your interview strengths and weaknesses to bolster your chances of getting through the final interview at the end. Again, I mean, I just about scraped through this interview, but you know, I came away with a lot of improvement points, and it was certainly important to take away that criticism and act on it effectively. I then had to pass a medical test, which apart from kind of maintaining that good level of health and fitness, there wasn't really a lot to do in terms of preparation. I was fortunate enough to pass, and I really do feel for those guys who would make, or guys and girls rather, who would make amazing pilot candidates, but they've just been dealt a bad hand in life, health-wise, you know. But on that note, it's important, you know, never say never until you've spoken with the military doctors. Don't just assume because you have something on your medical record that's it. It's always important to have that conversation.
Yeah.
So finally, all of the candidates that had made it this far in were invited back to RAF Cranwell for a 2-day assessment, which was testing our ability to work as teams, operate as leaders, problem solve under time pressure, individually and as a team. And I've personally found this experience really quite challenging. You know, I've never been a very competitive guy, and that you're surrounded by all these people who you're in competition with. Um, you know, like I wanted to shine, but you needed to balance that against being a team player, like listening to others' ideas, knowing when to push your opinion, but then also knowing like when to back down. You're trying to maintain that conservative, logical approach when time permits, but also be able to take control, you know, when if necessary. But the Air Force wasn't looking for what you'd maybe associate with a natural leader. They just wanted to see potential at the time. So on the second day, they gathered us all in a room, and they started calling out names. And if your name got read, you'd actually failed it, and you had to go home kind of there and then. And that was pretty grim, you know, just waiting for your name to be called. But again, you know, spoiler alert, I managed to get through, which allowed me to get to the final interview, which was just an opportunity to really sell myself, really, the last opportunity. I then had a 3-month wait to find out if I'd been successful, and that was a long 3 months. But you know, I remember the phone call. The emotional relief was just like nothing I'd ever experienced before. I just couldn't believe, you know, it was real, and I'd done it. The application process from start to finish took just over a year, but I was fortunate. It was worth every second.
It's amazing. I think one thing you said about when you first wanted to actually put yourself out there and trial for it, on one of my first videos, I said, like, you will never know if something will work or if you can do something until you try, right?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
At the end of the day, the only thing that should matter to yourself is what you think of yourself. And I think in in today's society, a lot of people think what people will think of them if they don't make it or if they don't become
Definitely.
successful in what they want to achieve. And I think people just have to go out there and do it because,
Yeah,
you know,
100%. Like I say, I mean, the only person who's going to regret it at the end of the day will be yourself, kind of later on in life. So, and you can't regret trying. Like if you try and fail, then that's fine. At least you know. But if you never give it a go, you'll never know, and that'll hurt way more.
100%. So obviously after that, so your name didn't get called, so that means you go through, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was all good from then. So yeah, once I say passed everything, and I had to wait that phone call out, and they gave me the phone call that I'd done it, and like I said, it was just awesome.
Okay, and then after that, what's the lifestyle for an RAF pilot in training like?
Yeah, cool. So lifestyle in the RF basically varies massively depending on whereabouts you are in your career. I couldn't speak too much for what it would be like later on in life, as I've still got a long way to go in the training pipeline. When you're on course, it can be really quite intense. You've got to put that work in around the clock if you want to do well. But providing you manage your time right, there's normally always opportunities to get the gym time in, chill out with your mates on course, and just have that break from the working day. Obviously, COVID aside. Um, Outside of courses, depending on where they have sent you, there are some epic opportunities to get involved in. Skiing and paragliding in Austria, surfing, mountain biking. They do parachuting in Cyprus, climbing, scuba diving in Malta. You can go sailing and canoeing in Norway. The list just goes on. And we call this adventure training, and it costs you little to nothing and counts as work, which is just amazing because you'd end up paying thousands to do it outside of the military. I also think a lot of people believe that when you sign up to the military, you write your name on this dotted line, and that's that. You have to leave home, leave everyone behind, but it's really quite different. It's really quite different to that. There are times you'll be away, but for a large portion, it's effectively a Monday to Friday. When I'm not on course, I come home weekly to see the family, see the girlfriend, see the schoolmates, uni mates, whoever really. So you really can get that nice work-life balance, but again, this is all outside of COVID at the moment. Things are very different, as you can imagine.
Yeah, I mean that's a massive part of outside of work, seeing your friends, seeing your family, having that side of your social well-being as well.
No, absolutely. You've definitely got to maintain that balance. I think it is important, especially with the training and whatnot, and just having that time away from it, just to let your brain relax and just be somewhere else for a little bit.
Definitely. So could you give me like three highs and three lows of your training process so far?
Yeah, cool. In terms of highs, there've been some awesome moments and feelings of achievement. When I first graduated out of officer training, that has to be one of them. So successfully completing the 6-month course, obtaining my commission. Another would be the first time I flew solo. I couldn't believe they'd let me take up this multi-million-pound aircraft on my own and trusted me to bring it back safely. And I just remember that like pure adrenaline rush, excitement mixed with nerves, but like just the right balance to do the task well and safely. Um, and finally, a ski trip I went on with the Air Force to Austria the year before last. We all competed in ski races against each other, and we just had an unbelievable 2 weeks with a great bunch of people. But honestly, like putting it down to 3 moments is hard to do. The job is so rewarding that there are plenty of awesome highs like all the time. In terms of lows, it's quite hard to pick like a moment in particular. Any low that I've kind of felt has just been followed by an even bigger high. Like for a job that's rewarding like this, normally everything that's worth having comes with some hardship before, if that makes sense. But if I had to pick one, I remember a time I failed one of my flying tests in my first flying course. And I'd had this huge wave of like doubt over my ability, and it was all entirely self-induced. The instructors didn't have any issues, but it wasn't a fun time. Like I just beat myself up about it relentlessly. But once that initial emotion had subsided, I was able to work out exactly what went wrong and how to fix it. Took my retest, was able to pass it the second time. And I learned a huge amount from that experience, which is definitely going to be useful as I move through my career. Because it certainly isn't the first time that's going to happen. It's certainly not going to be the first time I fail something like that. And it's just nice to know, I've got the ability to pick myself back up and go again. But I don't think, yeah, in terms of other lows, I probably couldn't give you any more than that.
Yeah. Well, one thing you said that's um important to me is that in every low, there's a positive that comes after.
Absolutely.
Because obviously, without the bad experiences and bad times, almost you wouldn't know what the good and better ones would feel like.
This is just, I mean, they always say, oh, it's always darkest before the dawn. And I mean, it's a cliche saying, and
Yeah.
sometimes I guess maybe it's not, but for doing stuff like this, when you're pushing, you're working to achieve something, like you are going to have to go through those hardships if it's worth having, because I mean, otherwise, like, everyone would have it right.
Yeah. So lockdown and COVID wise, how have you kept fit during lockdown, and tell me a bit about your passion for training.
Yeah, cool. I mean, there's certainly been a lot of experimenting over the lockdown period in terms of how to train effectively and maintain the standard of fitness that I wanted. I think the biggest challenge for myself, and I imagine for a lot of others, has been trying to keep on top of that strength training. Because there's only really a certain amount of body weight exercises and reps you can do, and it can begin to feel a bit pointless in comparison with the intensity that you'd get in a standard gym session with all the equipment. So initially, like, once the realization had set in that the gyms weren't going to open for some time, I tried to get online. I tried to buy some kit, but everything everywhere was sold out. But we had recently done some renovations in the garden at home, and we had like a load of cement and rubber lying about, along with some strong bags. I basically turned those into like makeshift dumbbells, which I could use for like back, arms, shoulders. I managed to get my girlfriend to sit on my back, sit on my shoulders, and we'd do some like weighted lunges, and then I'd do some like single leg stuff as well. Also get us a line my back for some weighted press ups, and local to us there was a football pitch, so I just used the crossbar for pull ups. So all in all, I managed to put together a fairly respectable regime with muscle splits kind of throughout the week, and then on top of that, just some 5K runs to keep on top of the cardio. But I was definitely grateful to have access to that open space, as I think it would have been really difficult to put something together well, as effective together otherwise. So but nonetheless, I was quite proud of what I put together for that period. In terms of my passion for training, I've always been into sports throughout my life. I played football until I was 16, and I was involved in a multitude of other sports: tennis, basketball, a bit of cricket. But to be honest, I never excelled at any individual sport. I've never been as good, like you're awesome at football. I've never had that kind of thing. But when I was 15, I got into boxing, and I'd never really considered boxing. I'd never watched or kept up to date with the big fights, and I still don't today. But I thought, why not give it a go? And I absolutely loved it. The training discipline and the intensity was just awesome. I really had an appreciation for the technique and the fitness, but I was never naturally aggressive. So I didn't enjoy getting in the ring that much. The other bloke always really wanted to hurt me, but I didn't want to hurt him, which is not a great dynamic to have when you're fighting. But I went ahead. I had 2 amateur bouts. I lost the first one, won the second, and then called it a day in terms of fighting. But the discipline I had got from the training to fight had just fully ingrained itself in me. So even though I wasn't training to fight anymore, I was still in the mindset that I couldn't miss a session. And it took a lot for me to say, do you know what? Like, I just don't feel like it today. And that basically stayed with me ever since. And I think certainly for myself, and I imagine for many others who have quite a high regard for health and fitness, it doesn't become a chore to eat well and train regularly. Once you've done it for so long, I think it just becomes the norm. And that, you can't imagine life without it. So when something like lockdown comes around the corner, as frustrating as it can be, it's not an option to just do nothing and wait it out and kind of wait for everything to reopen. My mind and body just which wouldn't let me. So my passion for health and fitness is definitely ingrained in me, and I don't see it going anywhere ever.
I think one thing that a lot of people have taken out of lockdown is that, as we said before, there's a lot of positives and negatives. And one thing for me and other people I think can relate to is everything being on screens, whether it's school or work, or even like now doing an interview. Everybody's got out more into the environment, into like the outside world, getting off the screens, going for their daily walks, getting into exercise more. And I think in a way it's actually like impacted people massively.
100%. It's definitely good to see people. Like I say, I mean, I've never seen more people out kind of about going for their runs, going for bike rides, and even spending time as like families as well, which I think is really quite nice. Taking that time to go together to the park and bits and bobs like when we can and when we can do it safely.
Well, anyway, Nick, thank you for your time. That was
Oh, thank
amazing.
you. No, I really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed it. I hope people can learn something from it and at least take something away. And they're not just too bored by my story, but yeah, fingers crossed.
Anyway, good luck with everything you're trying to do. Everyone watching, thank you very much for watching, and make sure you subscribe and share.